Welcome back to the Form Manager training playlist. In the last video, we learned about how to make a web form. In this video, we'll learn about the different elements that we use to build web forms. First, let's click the Add Element button to get started. Doing this brings up a pop-up which lists all the types of elements that are available. Before we go further, we can click on the Show Preview button to get a visual example of each element. Our first element is called the text area, and this is a multi-line text field useful for things like user comments. To add this, we'll click on the Add Element button next to it. This will load a menu on the far right of the screen. Now, this is where we can enter the name of our element. So for this one, we'll enter comments in the title field. Now, we may notice a lot of extra sections here, such as the element description, the form display, and the form validation sections. These are very niche options, and you most likely won't be using any of these. So for now, we're done with our new comment section, so we'll click Save next. Now we see the text area appear in the list. Let's click the View tab at the top to see how it looks. This shows us the live version of the form, and we can notice that our element is now displaying on it. Let's head back to Build, where we'll select Add Element again. This time, we'll choose Text Field. We can see from the preview that this is just a single line of text. This is useful for adding things like either first names or last names. We'll call this text field first name, and instead of hitting Save, we'll click Save plus Add Element instead. This is nice because it saves us a lot of time by bringing us back to the Select an Element interface. Now, let's choose text field again and label it last name and then click Save. Now let's go back to the Live View tab to check our work. Let's go back to Build, where we'll add an email element. This looks very similar to a text field, except it checks for the format of an email. So if someone submits a form and forgets to add the @ symbol to it, the field will notify them about the mistake. The only thing it can't do is check for an @osu.edu email address. So if we really want someone to submit in the OSU format, the best thing we can do is name the element OSU email. And down in the form display accordion, we'll find a placeholder line. For this placeholder, we're going to enter name.number@osu.edu. And then we'll move on to the live view of the form. We'll notice a gray placeholder text that disappears whenever we start to type it in. This will help prompt the user to enter their OSU email address. Now, if we need users to submit a number, we'll want to use the number element. This element is useful for getting information such as the number of guests coming to an event. However, say we want to add a minimum and maximum number of guests. First, we'll add a number element and call it number of guests. Then we can enter a minimum number and a maximum number here. To ensure we only have positive numbers here, we'll enter a minimum of 0 and leave the maximum blank. Now, we'll just close the form display accordion and hit Save. Changing over to the live version of the page, we can see our guests field. Notice the arrows beside it that allow us to increase or decrease the number in it. Our last two elements will be telephone and URL. A thing to note about the URL field is that it requires users to include either HTTP or HTTPS at the beginning of a URL. This requirement is why we may want to consider using a text field in its place instead. If we're asking for a personal website, for instance, a user might just type in www.personalsite.com. And they'll receive an error message because they didn't include the HTTP or HTTPS. So to avoid this frustration, it's better just to stick with the text field instead. So before we finish, let's set all of these elements to required to make sure users have to fill them out before we can submit a form. On the right side of the elements list, there's a line of checkboxes under a column named Required. So we'll check off each element that we want to be required. For the sake of this form, the names, emails, and other fields are required, so we'll check those off too. And then we'll click Save Elements at the very bottom. Now when we view the page on the live version, we'll see a red asterisk next to each field that each user needs to fill out. And that covers basic web form elements. In the next video, we'll learn about how to use the address element in Drupal.